When there's too many things to focus on, you end up focusing on nothing.
If you just change this little bit there and you kind of go, no, I've got to undo all these things and redo it. And that's about a day's work.
All that I wanted to say was know when to hold them, know when to fold them.
So part of our discussions for this episode is to look at not giving up, because we've gone through quite a lot in the last year and a half. We were preparing for doing courses, experiential courses in filmmaking. And just as we were about to start to get to the point where we were going to market those ideas, the virus hit us. And we thought, oh, what's going to happen now? And we started to rework and rethink about the whole process. But actually, what we started to do was to put in the marketing materials for what we were hoping to develop into that, so we can actually build our audience. So in actual fact, we haven't stopped what we intended to do.
Or in another case, the word pivot comes to mind. And what we've done is we haven't given up. Well, we've stopped. We've called a halt to one thing that we have got far. We've done the 80-20 Pareto principle. We've got 80% of the way. We can fine tune it later. Now it's important to, like what happened with the so-called pandemic is it reprioritized what we should be putting our efforts on in the short to medium term. And now we're realizing that we've created a product. We can park that for the moment. We now need to get our, our marketing together and brand awareness and get to understand social media and concentrate on building a brand of us and or anything we sell in or hope to sell in the future. So it just reprioritized what needs to be done in what order, and we pivoted from concentrating on product development to concentrating on branding and marketing development. So given limited resources, there's only two of us at the moment, it's all about what you do in what order for the best critical path analysis to lead to the most successful outcome in the short to medium term. So we're concentrating now. We're giving up for the short term on the training academies, product development, to now move to social media learning and usage thereof to promote the brand 52 Jokers Wild ourselves and what we can sell in the future.
In actual fact, we developed the programs to a certain point where we didn't need to do any more until we knew that we had any students, because we got the whole process in place. So in actual fact, what we needed to do was to start this process. And I think what's also happening is that it is a process of mentoring and developing processes within the media production, because part of the course that we were developing had students going out and doing what we're doing. And we're now going through that process, is becoming familiar with the technical side of it. Like, for example, we're not just using webcams to record these sessions. We're actually individually having cameras at the back. We may be communicating through Skype using webcams, but we're using actual video cameras, microphones, and recording as high a quality as we can, so that we can then intercut them into a nice little show. In fact, if you're watching this show, you may or may not be aware that me and Garvin are not actually in the same room, that we're at least 2.5 hours drive from one another. And technically, to some people in two different countries, although to some other folks,
and to more people on two different planets.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, we're as far away from each other in mindset and distance as anybody could potentially be.
Which is probably the good reason to have us separated.
Shorten that divide. The coming together of great minds to meet in the middle is what we're working on.
Well, it actually shows also how adaptable we can be to adjust according to what's actually going on in the world around us, because we have had to adapt. We've had to take on a different approach. We would have come down to Thomastown and actually set up a studio and done a lot of the recording there. But instead, we're using what we have available to us. We're not letting anything get in the way, and we're recording these programs. And we've got into a really nice pattern of producing at least 2 to 3 a week. But we're actually sufficiently advanced that what we're recording today won't go out until towards the end of September. And it's interesting because it's the 10th of August today, and one of our programs from the 6th of June just went out. We're kind of going, oh, that was a couple of months ago. Oh, that's amazing. So
we enjoy traveling back and forward in time while standing still. So we're back in time in what we're delivering and marketing context in the social media world and podcasting platforms. We're currently producing for the future to do the same again, and while at the same time sitting in the present and going, what are we doing? Should we be giving up? Because this is for the future, and if you feel, and other people out there were giving up now, and we're evidencing that, and we're saying, but what? For us to give up now, it's already gone by. We're giving up the future now. For us to stop, and we could still put out stuff till September and not do any much more work on it. But that aside, it's more a case of where do you put your. What we're finding is we should not give up on something, but more redirect effort for maximum reward. Use the Pareto principle of 80-20. Go, enough of that. Let's move on to the next thing. Don't be overly conscious of what's happening in different timelines, but more be aware of the medium-term journey of what our own expectations are as opposed to what others' expectations are. So that's what we're finding. We're questioning ourselves based on different things happening in social media world and no YouTube subscribers and no viewers, but that was never really our intention anyway. What we're trying to show or evidence is we're the guinea pigs. This is part of our course in terms of people wanting to get into film production and media production. They have to be able to put themselves out there, deal with an audience, deal with the tech, promote themselves and self-promote themselves using what's available. And what's in here is what's the product? What is their product at the end of the day? Our product at the end of the day is not us. Our product at the end of the day will be what we are the subject matter experts in and what we're pushing. And that is something else entirely, which we don't want to push on people currently because it's too early. We want to inform, entertain, get to know us, get to like us if we can find you, and trust us to consider choosing what it is we proffer.
And what we're doing is that as we go along that journey, we started off and what looked like a mountain, as we mentioned in another episode, we've suddenly broken down into small chunks. And once we've become competent with the first chunk, in this case, it was actually recording the half hour, what is a podcast and a video blog. Once we got that pattern working nicely and we were comfortable with the process, it became automated almost. We still have to physically make it.
I've automated George now. He's a fully AI cloned individual.
There's a process that we're going through. Once we became comfortable with that and we knew that we could cope, we then found that we had other blocks of time that opening up to us that we could
We've
then
invented
start to
time.
do.
We've figured out how to package time. That was another one of our shows now. You cannot create time. You can move time around as one of those theories. You cannot make time, you cannot create time. You can just avail of that time by moving it around. But we would like to create time. We might be able to do that in a video or in some other astral plane or multiverse. That'd be nice to know, or in one of our films to come.
Well, I think the important thing is that we're now beginning to work out how we can schedule the processes. The what took a long period of time has now become shrunk because we can be more efficient at it, and it's become, I say automated again. We've got into a way of doing it, but then we've now found that we've got this other section of time that we can now dedicate to the promotional videos that we're making. And we went through a certain iteration of one type of video, and now because we've been looking at what's on the internet, we've discovered that if we do it in a kind of square format, it gives us the scope to add more detail into it, which I think is quite useful. And now we've got a method going with that, and that's working right. We're now discussing other options like graphics, books, and we're starting to work out where we can fit those in T-shirts and caps, which is actually quite exciting because we're starting to visualize those aspects of what we see our business as being, and we're gradually building a brand.
Now, again, what's interesting here is I'll use the language of business speak for a second, and what we did was we did a competitive analysis of, who are our potential peers on LinkedIn, as an example. There's so many platforms we're getting confused, from YouTube to Twitter to Instagram to Pinterest to you name it, TikTok. We'll end up on TikTok sometime. We'll be talking off our heads. If it's still there, that's the question. We don't know who's going to own it at the end of the day, whether it be Twitter or Microsoft, or Mr. Trump might just put an end to it. But there'll be some version of it out there when we get to it. And we may end up on it. But in the meantime, when there's too many things to focus on, you end up focusing on nothing. So what we've decided to do is focus on LinkedIn, because it's a platform we understand more as business individuals. And we know how to target better other business individuals on that platform and decision makers. Now, we're not somebody that's aiming to talk to everybody on the planet. What we realize is our marketplace in the short term is the Irish UK market, in terms of who's closest to us when the pandemic moves off. Our other Film Production Academy might have a market that attracts from the Asias and elsewhere in the future. But in the short term, we need to market ourselves and understand a single platform, and that is LinkedIn. And in LinkedIn, we took a couple of influencers out there and we said, who's doing well on LinkedIn? Who's got hundreds of thousands of followers, and who's getting good content out there, and who's getting likes and comments, which is interactions, which the algorithm likes. And there's Shay Rowbottom is one that comes to mind. And we saw what she's offering in terms of a packaging for founders and SME executive types to promote themselves and their wares. And we are emulating the best of that because we can. We are packaging that for ourselves now. We're getting it front and center. We're putting ourselves front and center in it. And we are in control of this frame of shape and structure with a certain element of professionalism that will compare to the best of the best in LinkedIn. And we're very happy with that now. I think we've done the iteration that gets us to the next level, and then we can concentrate on content. What's in that frame and what's being said and who's in there is the next iteration potentially.
No, what we've also been told through different sources is that technically you need to actually have about 15 pieces of social media to actually pump out there every single day, which can, again, seem quite overwhelming. But we're also having the rebuffals from a few places that are saying, hang on a second, you're promoting yourself too much. Will you stop it? Now, we don't see how things as promotion. We're just sharing what we have. But we're being told, no, don't do that. That's too much. We'll ban you. And I know I created courses for a thing called Udemy, a platform called Udemy. And we were being told how to market things from different sources. And all of a sudden they were being shut down because they were overdoing and creating
spamming, probably.
What they were doing, spam. But I think they were creating quite imaginative ways to sell, to try and build an audience. And eventually they got stopped, and one of the things that Udemy used to do was to ban you for a month. So you couldn't actually talk to anybody, communicate to anybody. You weren't allowed to have any emails of anybody that were your students. You just had to talk to them through the platform. And if they banned you, you couldn't even do that. So it was a problem trying to work out how do you use social media to bring people to that platform or promote what's going on. It suddenly becomes confusing.
It's a minefield.
Yeah, and you have to step back, not give up, step back and reevaluate what is the best way forward.
Now, I was just going to mirror that now. Exactly. I was thinking, we're going to somebody said they're giving up. They're giving up something in particular. Or this is what they usually was. It's not that they're giving up. It's just whatever they're doing is not working to their original expectation. So we're saying it's like, I'm giving up being in film production. I'm giving up the whole shebang because I didn't get 5 subscribers on YouTube. My customers aren't on YouTube. Will never be on YouTube, potentially. And the sort of stuff you're going to be selling on YouTube is not going to be the high value, low volume thing that we're selling. So it's not where our original audience lies. But we got distracted into it based on, you could be an influencer on YouTube. You could get 1 million subscribers and make €5,000 for one video that went viral. We're going, actually, we found ourselves going down this funnel and silo of this is what you're meant to be doing because if you're doing social media. And we're giving up because it's not working. We were never meant to be doing it in the first place. We were meant to be doing what our product is. So stop, pull back in and go, what is it you're trying to sell? Who is your target audience? Where are they? They're probably everywhere from Facebook to Instagram and Pinterest, but what they're doing in those social media platforms is consuming different things. They don't expect to spend 15,000 over on YouTube. They expect to get entertained by pussycats. They're on Pinterest, they're trying to look, possibly on Instagram, they're trying to look at, someone's kitchen and how it's dressed up. The platforms are selling different levels of consumption and value and price propositions. And we're mixing it all together and getting confused as to we just need to be there front and center, everybody loving, everyone liking, everyone commenting, and loads of followers to beat the band, and we're going to be influencers, and that was never the intention. And now people are talking about giving up because they didn't achieve something they weren't actually originally setting out to do. So we have to pull it back in and go, what is it we're trying to do? What is it we want to do? Where are our likely audiences? And before we reach them, how do we reach them? And what we're being taught from multiple areas are entertain them, inform them, make them aware, show them you exist, keep on giving them something for nothing, and reel them in. It's not go out there with a shotgun and shoot into the water and get the fish. You have to hook them. And it might be 7 pieces of content over time, and quality content giving value first, and no hard sell. And to the right audience, not to everybody and anybody, because if they don't react, they were never meant to. That was the problem. But we give up because of that seeming rejection. So maybe just baseline it again, reassess, retarget, pivot, go back in.
And again, I think it's about building relationships, because unless you've actually built that relationship so that people can actually trust what you're doing, then you'll never probably get the sale in the first place. And I think that's another aspect. But also going back to the YouTube thing, we are still releasing things on YouTube. It takes a good year or two to actually build an audience. So you can't really focus on that. If we're putting stuff out constantly, then it'll eventually gradually build up an audience and subscribers. We are reminding people and suggesting to people to subscribe and all the other bits and pieces that you're meant to do, but we're not getting overwhelmed on it. And one of the key things that is actually said in all social media activities is be careful that you don't get burnt out, which is why some people have to give up. They don't want to give up mentally, but they physically have to give up for a period of time because they've actually worn themselves out. And that's something else that we have to do. That kind of work-life balance is only so much that we can do. We may be really, really enthusiastic, but you can still burn yourself out if you don't plan and schedule what you're doing so you can actually get the rest periods in there as well as doing the hard work. And again, you have to be moderate in how much information you're taking in from what's being said on the internet, even by friends and family and all these other people that supposedly know, to make sure that what you're doing can be, in some cases, measured. So again, that's smart idea. What is that? It's
short, measurable, attainable, realistic, timely. I think
that's
is.
It.
I got some of them, but
yeah, no, I think that was that. That's it. It's but again, that realistic thing is what most people don't think about. And the timely thing, we are stuck in a certain period of time. We can only effectively do about 8 hours of reasonable work, and then you need some time to relax and unwind. And it's in those unwinding periods that you get ideas just suddenly seep into your head. But if you don't have that and you're just hammer and tongs, work, some of the greatest ideas you could ever have are not being given a chance to filter from the unconscious into the consciousness.
Now, that's an interesting thing, because I'm now using your sayings. But that aside, we were reading the book by Julia Cameron, The Artist's Way, and what we were trying to concentrate in particular in this year is on our art, our creativity, to try and move the functionality we can do the debit and credits all day long. I'm an expert in business intelligence. I'm a chartered accountant by profession. I have 30 years experience in that. George is a lecturer, has written the courses for film production for multiple, colleges and universities out there, has coached and mentored for 30 years as well in all capacities in the production area. And I go, so between us, we're quite formidable in terms of 100 years of experience, or 60 years of experience we know what we're talking about. We know what right and wrong looks like. We know what the facts and figures are. We know what profitability and costs is about, and we know how to eliminate risk and, process drive and put in validations and controls. That is all very well and fine, but in the absence of a customer willing to pay for it, it's a little bit pointless. So we can all think we're going to go out there and make multi-millions and have very successful businesses, but our journey was, it's difficult to do as a single individual. It's easier to do it as two, and it's easier to do it with more. But again, it's how big is the opportunity? Where is the opportunity? What's the cost of acquisition of these customers and the cost of production? Because you have to usually front load building all the capability in order to deliver to it if it's a very functional or material type item as opposed to a software as a service. But we're all very excited about what we can do, could do, should do, might do. But it's all irrelevant in the absence of this relationship that George is talking about with a marketplace that's interested in it, is asking for it, is willing to pay for it, and willing to be your customer as opposed to your competitors. So we're mindful of all that as well. And that is still not branding and marketing and selling in a social media context with limited budget. So all of this can be very, very overpowering to small businesses, and disillusionment can set in very, very fast, and people give up before they quite get there based on they're carrying out so many roles that they're not the experts in. So we just have to be mindful of that and realize we're not the expert in this, we are in that, but this is in a difficult, critical path of no point in being an expert in production if we've no selling and marketing expertise and branding, and no one knows we exist. And you can have the golden goose in the corner there, but no one wants its eggs because they don't know it exists and they don't know where to buy them. So you can't do things in isolation, and don't give up. It's get more help, focus more, learn more, stop as usually, or refocus, pivot. The YouTube is a great source for learning. We go up there and see 0 subscribers, 0 followers. This is what you need to do. We go off and do it, and nothing happens except for the 40 hours we just spent doing what it said on the tin. And that didn't make a damn difference because it's in isolation, coming from someone that's already done it and they don't even know how they did it themselves, all after the fact with a different algorithm. So don't get put off by the seeming experts because what they're saying to do doesn't work for you, if that makes sense.
Now, the key thing I think, which both Garvin and myself have had, is that we failed a few times. We've had our belly ups. We've had the occasions where something has gone wrong, and we've learned from it, which is why we're in a position that we are not prepared to give up. But we also know, which is going to sound a bit strange, we also know when there is the right time to give up on certain activities, or when they're not going to be viable, or when they're going to lead us into a cul-de-sac that is a waste of our time. And those are things that, if we become overly precious about what we're doing, then we may through our own sort of pig ignorance or bloody mindedness just keep on going. But there are times when sometimes you have to stop and re-evaluate what you're doing so you can actually get back on the right track and do what the right thing is.
I'm hoping because again, stuff just floats into my head from the jets and floats in from the universe. It might be in context. It probably is. And all I wanted to say was know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away. It might be Johnny Cash, I'm not too sure, but it's that type of thing. You gotta be able to walk away. That's the walk away. That's it's not a give up. It's stop trying to beat a dead horse. It's walk away, fold them, move on. Back to our concept of 50 Jokers Wild. Live to play another day. Play another hand. But don't go in blind and don't go in all in on what you know to be a losing hand because you're already playing. It's call time. I, as an accountant, have told more people, cut your losses right now. You can see the future next 6 months based on how things are playing out. You're driving towards Thelma and Louise over a cliff. There's nowhere else that's going to happen and going to land. Given you see that now, based on the forecast capability and all the rest of it, stop. Draw a line, save what you can, and get out of Dodge. Hold off, and you'll live to play another day.
Now, one of the key things that we started to do when we were recording these programs, because you can be very self-critical and you might want to be a perfectionist in what you're doing and everything has to be perfect. But the difficulty is, and I've had this experience with a number of clients in the past, is you can end up working on a project and working and working. You're not getting paid any more money, but they keep on working and working. You kind of go, in the time it took me to do this one project, I could have done 10. Now, we're actually proving that in a way because we're recording half-hour programs. And so far, at one stage, we were recording 4 a week. And now because we've got other activities, we only need to do 2 a week because we've built up a good stock. But we know that within what we're doing, yes, there are faults. There will be issues. There will be problems. But we learn from those experiences and build them into the next project. And in fact, if you go back and watch our very first episodes, you'll find that I've got a white sheet and there was the room that Garvin was in, but we've gone to having backgrounds in the, behind us to now green screens, having lights. We've reset up the sound system so we can try and get a better quality of sound. And we just keep improving. And then we go out and we look at different we actually do a lot of research, believe it or not, because we go off and we read books and we come back, we chat about it, we test out ideas, we see what might have a bit of legs with it, and we'll go with that. And I think regardless of what area you're actually deciding to go into, if it's film industry, because that's our main interest, is experiment. Do short little 1 minute or 30-second pieces, calculate through whatever activity that you're doing, how long it takes you to do that process, and then you'll know how to cost it out. But you'll also get clients that will come back and they'll say something in a few seconds, and you kind of go, well, that's 5 days work.
It's very simple to say something complex.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the number of times I've kind of gone through and someone said, oh, I need to do this. Could you just change? We were talking about this the other day. Oh, if you just change this little bit there, and you kind of go, no, I've got to undo all these things and redo it. And that's about a day's work. Oh, no, I'm not going to pay for that. I just want you to move it. Can't move it. The other problem is do learn the processes, because there's loads and loads of templates that have been put together by other people, but they restrict you in what you can actually do. You can make these lovely things, but they're limited in what they can do. And if you don't know how to do it from scratch, you may have a client coming and say, yeah, but could you just move that bit over there? And the template you have may not give you that flexibility. And all of a sudden, if you don't know how to do it and you're just using templates and relying on them, you suddenly may find you're out of work because they won't come back to you because you couldn't do the thing that they thought you could do. And that could be a problem.
So what we're saying is don't give up. No, give up certain things. Give up broken processes. Give up stuff that's wasting your time. Give up bad customers. Give up loss-making customers. Give up people that drain you of your time and energy. And focus all that. That's where you're getting your time back. It's focus on things that work, not on things that don't work. Apply the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle, whatever it's called, and go spend 80% of your time, or 20% of your time, get 80% of the value. Or when you get that 80% in, that's enough, because the next 20% will take 80% again to get that extra improvement. It's minimum viable product. Get as far as you need to go for what's there now, so you can engage and get it out there to the customer and work with potential customers and potential audiences to improve on what's there and move that minimum viable product, minimum value proposition up in little iterations of value perception over, baby steps, and then come back next year and it's a whole other offering to what you originally started with. And that's where we're looking at, do we give up, or do we look at what went out in the first 16 weeks and go, well, day one, it was, I'm off in the back of my room shouting at the camera. I probably still am and always will, but we have the kit now, though I don't have to shout as loud, and I can maybe talk a little bit slower and listen to George more. But the thing is, we're capturing it in higher definition. We're getting control of the sound. We're in a position to manipulate backgrounds and frames where we weren't in the beginning. And we didn't know what we were doing then, and we probably don't know what we're doing now. And we hope we never know what we're doing, because it'd be a very boring world indeed if we did. But we know we can do it. We know we can address it. We know whatever's thrown at us, we can make a good attempt of, and we're looking forward to working on multiple projects with multiple different people. So it comes back, we're not about to give up. We're about to listen to the world and the audience and our friends and family and customers and whoever, and keep on iterating, pivoting, listening, acting, adapting, adopting, and then we will arrive at something that will make the most sense. Had we started that at the beginning, it's very few people can just arrive at that at the start. It's over time and through these patterns of listening and engaging that you will then start to hear who your audience are and what they really want versus what we think they want.
One of the things that I've started to learn in the last few years is the importance of having a coach or a mentor or a counselor or somebody in the field that you're interested in, who you can actually bounce ideas off, and who will actually listen to you and see what you're saying and help not actually guide you, but allow you to bounce ideas off so you can find your own solutions, which I think is important. So you can find how to learn through self-directed study. But it's important to have that other person who understands what the processes are. So again, I would suggest people learn a little bit of psychology in the way of building relationships, and then develop a relationship with someone that you aspire to emulate at some point down the line. I've always had people that have been about 20 or 15 years older than myself that I've been able to go to.
Most of them are dead now. That's it, George. They're all 6 foot under now, based on this age.
They still ring me up occasionally. You know, we have a little seances every now and then and just see what's going on.
You hear voices. I do too.
It is important. Now, again, having said that, I mean, you know, if you're moving into a new field and say you're in your late 50s like I am, you may find that someone's in their 30s might be the mentor for you if they're good as people, if that makes sense. They're listening. They know how to listen to what's going on. And I know that over the last 2 years, Garvin and I have been bouncing ideas. We've been modifying our own personalities to work with one another. And that's key, I think, to any kind of success within business is to learn how to work with other people so you can give and take as necessary, but you're not frightened to give your own criticism to what's going on, constructive criticism, and also receiving constructive criticism, which I think is also important. Sometimes, especially when you're younger, and I know in filmmaking, you could put a lot of effort into something, someone comes along and says something, and you feel that your world has been just destroyed. Learn how to cope with that and how to accept critical thinking and also understand the psychology of how others think. That is a very important aspect of this kind of career.
George has all that down pat. I haven't got any of it, and I'm still the petulant child from many a video before. I am learning that. I'm being coached and mentored in that capacity, in terms of my relationship with George. It's like, stop being a child now, and we're not we're not criticizing you. We're criticizing the project, and we're trying to not that we're critiquing it. We're trying to improve on it for an audience that hasn't seen it yet. So it's not personal. It's more the sum of the parts. How do we add two things? 1 + 1 is 3. That's what we want. That's what everyone wants. The sum of the parts is more. It's these isolated individuals thinking, I have the best bit, you have the best bit, me. There's no me out there at all. Even the most successful people, there's a team behind them. And without that team or some version of that team, that individual is a voice lost in the crowd that can't be heard. They are a personality, they're a star, but they're invisible without the team that's behind them. And that's including you two and their whole crew. They work together. Everyone's got certain people have jobs. Certain people are the stars or the spokesperson or the brand image for all intents and purposes. But it's the we. I used to be a me. I am now a we. But then I hope to God that's not the me, myself, and I, and the split personality that is also in contained within.
See, he is learning about psychology. Look, he's just described it all the way through that last part. One of the critical things that we were saying, it's all really good stuff. If you have someone that criticizes in a constructive way a piece of work and asks for certain changes, if you're able to tell them how much that change will cost, you can actually then, in time more than anything else, you can weigh up whether or not it is worth spending that time or not. And that becomes a major part of the decision making with producers, directors, and editors or cameramen. It all depends on how much time those little tweaks will make. And quite often, your audience won't notice anyway. So again, you have to weigh up how much is that 80-20 thing again. So, well, look, we're coming to the end of another show. We've gone to way over what we normally would do, but I think it's been a packed full episode. So I hope you enjoy this. And if this is something that you want to hear more about, please let us know in comments or feedback in some form or fashion. And I'll let Garvin just close.
I was just going to say, don't give it up. Give it up. Keep giving till you're dead. And then afterwards as well. Take care.
Thanks for watching. Bye for now.
Hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe and click on the bell for notifications.